Well, hello everyone. Once again, welcome to our Saturday. It's been, our weekly hockey podcast. It is the hockey podcast. It is I, Kevin Olenek, with Sean in Calgary. Hello.
Hello.
And Tyler, not in Terrace, but in Surrey, because you were at the Colorado game last night.
Yes.
Seeing
I drew the right one.
You did. A historic night as Elias Petterrson, 5 points, the youngest player in Vancouver Canucks history to score 5 points in the National Hockey League, or in Canucks history, not National Hockey League history, sorry, in Canucks history. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it's probably a foregone conclusion at this point that Petterrson is winning the Calder. I think we can start that conversation. But is he a generational talent? Is he, because that debate is happening right now. Also, we're going to talk about Shotgun Jake, because I don't think that Jake Virtanen is getting a lot of love outside of the Vancouver Canuck community. But he had a really good week. He had his first multi-goal game this of his career this week. We're also going to talk about the vibe around the Vancouver Canuck fan base. Live tweeting from their owner, Francisco Aquilini. Good thing or bad thing? We'll get into that. Also, we are going to talk about officiating, and is it been consistent or not? Slava Yoynov, does he deserve a chance to come back to the National Hockey League? And is the LA Kings season over? And are we also seeing the rise of the Buffalo Sabres, who, as we are recording this, are dismantling the Ottawa Senators 7-1 as we are recording this? But maybe we'll start basically from last week. It was last Saturday. Pittsburgh Penguins walked into Vancouver, beat the Canucks 5-0 in a game that they pretty much controlled from pillar to post. Quite frankly, not surprising. They're an elite team. They're a Stanley Cup contending team. Next Sunday, Travis Green does pretty much a bag skate, intense practice. Yells, things like that. What were your takeaways from there? And maybe what were some of your takeaways from the games this week, which was basically a 3-1 week, winning against Minnesota, Chicago, and Colorado on Friday, and then the loss to Pittsburgh.
Well, yeah, the loss to Pittsburgh, I think, was maybe just a bit of a letdown with the injuries starting to pile up a bit. When you've got two lines centered by Crosby and Malkin, and you're down the top pairing, it doesn't. It's going to be tough to really hold them at bay. And they did for a couple periods, but they just had a few breakdowns in the third, and you can't do that versus a team with Malkin and Crosby on it. And then for the rest of the time, after that the skate on the Sunday after that game, it looked like the team got a little more rejuvenated, a little more just making sure that they took care of their own end, and then got some confidence, and then we saw a lot of fun last night.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the Pittsburgh game, I don't know if maybe the team felt it was going to be a little easier than it should have been, considering that they did beat the Penguins on the road not too long ago. But you look at the results since then and how the season's gone to date. That one's just a little bit of an anomaly. I think they just were a little flat, and the result turned out not in their favor. And then the coach, made sure that they were refocused for the next game.
Is Travis Green getting the credit that he deserves for what he's meant to this team? Because it's almost, if in one sense, it's been about a rebuild, but I think Travis Green has put cemented some higher expectations on what he expects from the players from the Canucks, from his team.
Yeah, he definitely has created an environment where the expectations, especially of the younger skilled players, are a lot higher than you would expect, especially with like the Huttons, the Virtanens. He's really found a way to push their buttons like in the right way to get the most out of them. So, and that's what I've come to see from him. People were bemoaning the fact that he wasn't giving Virtanen the ice time, was scratching Ben Hutton, but the way they're playing this season, it looks like his message has gotten through, and they've come out the other end vastly better players.
Yeah, I think what stood out to me and what he's not getting enough credit for is that he has been able to do that, to push those secondary players more. Perhaps there can be a feeling that sets in that certain star players are just going to carry the team and everybody can ride coattails. This team's not good enough to be able to compete night to night unless everybody is doing their job. And he's been pushing the right buttons to get the best out of everybody. And look what they're doing now. I mean, they look like a team that expects to win every night. They believe in their chances. They're beating quality teams. They're staying in games. You know, like last night, they never fell behind more than one goal once Colorado did get a lead. So they he's got them believing, and it does. You know, you do need all the guys that are putting the uniform on each night to do their part. And there's been times in the past where it hasn't looked like that. There's guys just out there not doing much. I mean, last night Louis Eriksson scored. I mean, everybody's going hallelujah, he scored. You know. So yeah, the fact that Travis Green's been able to get so much out of this roster with so little expectations for them, I think he deserves more credit for.
Yeah, they're in the second hottest team in terms of win streak, tied with the Flames. The Arizona Coyotes have won 5 in a row, but the Canucks, third in the second in the Western Conference, third or fourth overall, because the Arizona Coyotes and the New York Islanders are currently on the longest win streaks of. Arizona has 5 and the Islanders have 4. The Canucks and the Flames have won 3 in a row. And it just, I think that a lot of people are expecting this other shoe to drop. And during the season, it's quite possible that will happen. That could happen at some point in time. But it just, especially with all of the injuries, this team seems to be together. This team, I haven't felt like there was really a point at this team that they're a couple of times, maybe against Washington and Pittsburgh, they were a little bit out of it, but most of the time they've been in games, or even if they had a bad period, they found against Chicago, they didn't have a great first period, but they came back in the second and adjusted a bit. It seems like they're in every game at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, other than the Pittsburgh game last Saturday and the Winnipeg game when they were at Bell MTS Place. I mean, other than those two, you always, as somebody watching, I always had a feeling like they were in the game.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, and I mean, and the goal. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Considering these injuries, considering all of that, I mean, I think that they're in the lead or in the top 3 of man games injured at this point in time. It's a mash unit. So I think all things considered, a record of 9-6 after 15 games is pretty doggone good. And they're going on a road trip, of course, this week as well. But so that'll be interesting. Detroit and Boston to start off. Yeah, you talk a little bit about Virtanen, and it feels to me, I'm going to talk about the crowd in a little bit, but it feels like, what's the difference this year with Jake Virtanen than the last few years? How has it clicked? I mean, he's had his first multi-goal game this year of his career this week against Minnesota. It was Minnesota, right? Yes, it was Minnesota. It feels like this guy is starting to figure it out?
Yeah, I think he's playing with a little more confidence. He's playing at a higher pace. He's playing at a higher intensity, and it's those three things are bringing together the Jake Virtanen that we thought we were getting when he was drafted. I still think he's got another one or two levels to go to as well. Especially if he gets to play with some more skilled players, because he has been sort of been put in the bottom six more often than not, playing with the likes of the Sutters, the Russells, which I thought was a really good line that was put together by Travis Green until Sutter got hurt. But if Virtanen can continue with playing this way and putting together games where he's not, even if he's not being on the score sheet, he's gaining the zone with speed and giving the Canucks the offensive zone entries, as well as playing with the intensity, getting in on the forecheck, laying the body. He doesn't necessarily have to make the big hits, but as long as he's constantly there, that's going to lead to more scoring opportunities and a potential bump up the lineup to be that physical forechecker for the skilled players going forward.
I think with Jake Virtanen, Kevin, you said it looks like he's figuring out. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way of putting it. His game, to me, looks more efficient. There's not as much running around out there. He's a lot smarter about what he's doing, and then that's giving him some more chances to score now. And he's always had the skills to finish and put the puck in the net. Now it's just getting the rest of that game put together, and clearly he has a lot of trust from the coach now. And it's all coming together for him. But I think it really just does start with figuring out what his game should look like and playing it in a very efficient manner. And that to me is how I would characterize the change.
Yeah, it takes a while for. I mean, we have pretty high expectations, especially if it's a high draft pick we expect people to figure it out right away, and that's not always the case. Sometimes it takes time and a different coach and a different environment. I really think him and Gaudette have some really good chemistry together. I don't know if Gaudette's going to be up all year or not, but I mean, it feels to me like the Gaudette Virtanen future line looks like they have some really good chemistry together.
Yeah, going forward with Gaudette Virtanen, and then if you look forward to the future, I think Gaudette Virtanen as a duo to build a third line around is something that fans can get excited about, as well to put behind the Besser Petterrson, and then Horvat with whoever they put him with, and that is someone I want to see them do that is Nikolai Goldobin, who I also think is not getting the recognition he deserves for what he's been doing.
Yeah, no, he's
in specific circumstances, because he's had his hiccups.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, he's playing well in a lot of different ways. And, I think, I think you can put now, I think Goldobin is probably better with Petterrson, but he wouldn't be bad with Horvat. Like, you have options now of kind of switching some lines up a little bit in the middle of a game if you need to.
With Petterrson, though, I think the more comfortable he's getting, the more he's wanting the puck, and the more he controls the puck, the less effective Goldobin becomes, because Goldobin's one of those guys who needs the puck to be effective, and that's why I think moving him onto a line with Horvat creates an opportunity there to create two very good lines that can control the play. And then you throw in Virtanen with whoever he's with on that third line, whether it's Gaudette, whether it's Sutter when he comes back. It's going to be, I think you could roll those three lines like offensively or transitionally, and then once the Canucks are fully healthy, you've got that Beagle line to really sort of take the defensive zone draws and the defensive zone starts away from those three lines and let them be a little more offensive.
Yeah.
You'd never see this reaction out of Travis Green, but he's got to be feeling somewhat giddy about all the different options he has, given how well everybody's playing right now. He can mix and match and get all kinds of different great outcomes the way it's going.
Yeah, at least up front.
Yeah. Let's separate the defense and forwards.
Let's talk a bit about that. It's tough. Obviously, Tanner and Edler are out. It's what are we seeing? What's working? What's not? Is this what we expect? Or
yeah, I like in terms of what Travis Green has done with the defense. I do like that he's paired Pouliot and Stetcher together. I think that's a very good pairing. What I don't like is that it seems like the Petterrson line is getting paired up with the Biega-Delzato pairing, and despite them having such a great game last night, I still think that I would like to see them give Petterrson someone who can move the puck better than a Delzato and a Biega. So, maybe we see Chatfield slide in next game instead of Biega, or they call up Brisebois, who they just sent down type deal. But I want to see someone other than those two paired with the Petterrson line.
I would think that if somebody's going to draw in, if that's not on the roster right now, I would think that Brisebois probably has the best chance at that. But Derek Pouliot for me is really picked it up and really because they've had no other choice at this point. But when both Tanev and Edler went down, that was my concern. Is he going to get, for lack of a better term, get exposed? Having to be relied on more. And there he is last night. I know it was kind of a lucky goal, but he gets credit for the game-winning goal. The coach is really leaning on him, and he's responding. So that certainly helped with the defense to stabilize it a little bit. I agree with you, Sean. I think the pairing with Stetcher has been good. But if there's going to be something where the Canucks start to not sustain the success, I think the defense is going to be a much bigger concern than anything up front.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, I was thinking about this earlier, how with the Hutton emerging as a big minute guy in the absence of Edler, and Pouliot stepping up now. Going into later this season and next season, the Canucks are very deep on the left side. Especially if they decide to keep Edler. They've got Edler, they've got Hutton, they've got Pouliot, they've got Hulevi coming up, they've got Hughes coming up. But on that right side, it's slim pickings outside of Tanev, who we want to see stay healthy, but can't seem to. Stetcher's been playing better of late, but after that, it's very slim pickings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a concern going forward. Before we have to talk about the Petterrson too, but before we get into Petterrson specifically, what about the goaltending? How long do you think? When do we think we see Bachman?
Well, it sounds like Nielsen is traveling for the road trip, so we might not even see him. Well, yeah. We might not even see Bachman. We might see Nielsen come back. I haven't been too upset with Markstrom this season. He's had a couple rough games, but for the most part, he's been solid.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Canucks have the firepower to outscore the opposition when Markstrom has a bad game is a good thing. It's a positive sign because last season they didn't have that.
The only back-to-backs on the upcoming road trip are the 12th and 13th, the Monday, Tuesday, Rangers and Islanders. So I would think that Nilsson is probably likely to be healthy by then.
So you can run Markstrom for a bit.
Yeah.
Like he had a tough game last night, but he still battled through it and made a few very key saves late in the game. He had a very good Grant Fuhr game last night.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. He almost got through that last penalty kill there late in the third period. Almost got through it, made a couple of big saves there, and then the breakdown where the puck goes across the ice, he had no chance. But no, I thought that's a good way of putting it. He had a very Grant Fuhr game last night for sure. It was not great, but it was enough to get the win.
There's a lot of goaltenders that have had to have some Grant Fuhr games this year. It seems to be quite a theme in the National Hockey League. Like I guess with scoring being up. I mean, even the Flames with Mike Smith on against Colorado Thursday had to have a Grant Fuhr game.
Yeah.
After
the fans love scoring, though. I mean, last night was so electric because the horn went off 7 times. You know, I mean, the goalies don't love the scoring. It certainly doesn't help their save percentage, but that's always seemingly the objective around hockey is to keep scoring up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even, like, I think in all sports, I mean, you look at the Golden State Warriors, didn't they have a 92-point half this week? I mean, everyone's just
crazy.
That was crazy. I mean, and then the game of the year that everyone's been talking about in the NFLs was the Kansas City-New England game, which was 43-40. So, yeah, scoring is up. I think the fans are loving offense. For sure, around the sporting world. But speaking of offense, let's talk about Petterrson. 5 points last night, Colorado. The guy just continues. He is not slowing down. I think he got Rookie of the Month. I guess without a doubt, right now he is the leader in terms of the Calder. I guess we can simplify that. I mean, there was a bunch of other nominees for Rookie of the Month, but I mean, it's Petterrson. I think we can all agree on that. Are we okay? So I guess the question is Canucks fans starting to? Is he becoming this generational franchise player, or is it too early to say that? And we need to wait a little bit. Like, where are you in terms of where Petterrson is right now?
I think he's a franchise player for sure. Generational, I think it's a bit early, but the way all the things he does away from the puck, as well as with the puck, has me leaning towards that he is one of those like generational players, because even when he's not scoring, and let's be honest, that's not a lot of time, because he finds ways to score he's scoring what I think two or three games he hasn't produced a point, but he is great off the puck. He is creating chances for other players. He's a complete player. He is a number one center, and he's not even 20.
What really stood out watching last night in the building and being in the upper level and having such a wide angle of the ice, and Sean, you saw the Canucks play in Calgary there at the beginning of the season. Yeah. He just never seems to be in the wrong spot. You know, he's always in the right spot. It seems like he's like 2 or 3 steps ahead of the other players. And you look at the tying goal last night. I mean, it all happened so fast. Horvat forces the turnover, throws the puck out in front. I mean, I don't think he's really looking. He's just hoping somebody's going to be there, and like Pettersson's there, you know, and he's there with time to spare too. So that vision and the defensive awareness. I mean, there's times where he stays back and he doesn't cheat. He doesn't try to force things that aren't there. It's not just offensive mind. he's not one-dimensional for a rookie in this league, and that's what's really starting to grab people's attention.
He 23 shots on goal in 9 games, 9 goals, 39.1 is his shooting percentage. That is electric at this. I mean, for early start. It's. I mean, I understand like the other there's right now there's a debate from the Oilers, some Oilers fan base, of whether or not he is generational. I mean, maybe a little too early, but there's reason to be excited about this guy. I mean, a 5th pick in the draft. I mean, a lot of people, and there's a lot of talk about that in Canuck media circles this week. Is we never really had that expectation about Petterrson. There was some head scratching about this pick, and ultimately this guy has turned out to be more than what's been expected. And I mean, I think certainly, yeah, I think I think it's hard not to argue that he's a guy. I said this before. He's a guy that will wear eventually at least an A on his jersey. And I think a franchise player, a guy that you want to have for the next 10 years in your organization, you want to find a way to keep as long as you possibly can.
Oh yeah, that, like I said, franchise player for sure. He's a player you build around. Generational, I think it can get overused, especially when you've got such a really good player in Austin Matthews in Toronto, where they love to use that term to describe him. But it's like I said, for me, it's not necessarily the fact that he's scoring and the rate he's scoring at. It's everything else he does.
Yeah,
that makes me very excited going forwards. He makes players better. He creates something out of nothing. Watching the power, watching him along the boards, and like even I would say the play that impressed me the most didn't even result in a goal. It was that second feed to Besser early in the first last night, where he gets the pass and he feels the check. But he also knows where Besser is and that he has speed, and he just feeds a feathered pass to open space where Besser can go in and skate onto it with speed, and he's now got a break on goal. It's those plays. It's the little tap back passes through his legs to open players on the power play. It's all those plays that just show how well he thinks the game, how far ahead of the game he is compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, you bring up there's some debate amongst Oilers Twitter there in regards to using the word generational talent for Elias Petterrson. Well, is it just they don't want somebody to potentially look better than their generational talent, or is it more to it than that? Or
well, it's. I mean, to me, I think they've been riding that coattail of having McDavid, and no question, McDavid is in your top. Like McDavid's top 2 in the league at least. I think there's some Pittsburgh Penguin fans that might say top 3, because I think that they feel that one of the guys that they have is a little bit underrated, and I would agree with that. Historically, I think. For sure, but I mean, yeah, I think that there probably is a little bit of envy from Oilerland. I mean, is Leon Draisaitl the guy that they paid for right now?
No.
I would argue he's a little bit overrated. A little bit. I mean, it's really hard to say. I don't think that they should have gave him that contract. I think that was a huge error. I understand why you signed Connor McDavid, but I don't know if you needed to sign Leon Draisaitl for that point in time. And the Oilers' draft history, other than Connor McDavid and Darnell Nurse, and isn't exactly rosy, really. I mean,
no.
Yeah, maybe there is some envy over there. I mean, I'm not saying that Draisaitl is a terrible pick. It was a good pick, but I don't think Draisaitl is coming off as a franchise player yet.
Well, he's not. He's not. He never will be. Like, he's a good player. He can be a very good number one center on most teams, and a very good number two center to McDavid. But he's not going to be that franchise changing center that you can build a team around.
Yeah. To me, right now, the generational players I would put as McDavid, Crosby, Malkin, Ovechkin, Carlson, Price. I would say that those would be the 6 that I would nominate as generational players.
Yeah, and Austin Matthews isn't on that list.
No, he's not. I'm sorry. Sorry, Leaf fans. Austin Matthews is a good to great player. If the Leafs start winning cups, I think then maybe I think that it's fair to put Matthews in generational, but he hasn't really done anything yet.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, it's tough to really put that tag on Petterrson.
Yeah.
Especially 10 games into his career, 9 games into his career. But it's just, like I said, just the way he plays. Like, I think I saw a quote from Ray Ferraro saying that back when Datsuk first came into the league, he was really hard to not be the fanboy, like the leader of the Pavel Datsuk fan club. And he's saying he gets the same feeling from Petterrson, and it's only 9 games into his career.
Yeah, so, and then Bob McKenzie followed that up by saying that last night's performance by Petterrson was one for the ages, and that last night in particular seemed transcendent. Some big words from Bob McKenzie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's a player I think it's fair to say at this point in time, I would say that Petterrson is probably becoming in the top 10 or 20 of players that you have to watch if he's playing. Like, if he's on, you got to see this guy. I mean, it's definitely that exciting. But, I mean, also to be fair, you're right. It's 10 games into his career. I mean, and this media sometimes it's up and down a little bit. I mean, there were people comparing Quinn Hughes to Bobby Orr sort of in the off season. So just sometimes you do have to go calm. But what about I have to tell you, like, in the 3 years that I've lived out here, the first 2 seasons, the one under Willie and the first under Travis, it was, other than the Sedin's retaring, it was hard to watch this team. It was, there wasn't a lot of energy. Things that I remember was Ryan Miller fighting, Ryan Miller complaining about defense, but there wasn't really a lot that you could get excited about. But this year, you've got Ely Pete, you've got Shotgun Jake, and people going on Twitter drinking beer and debating if it should be beer or wine. Tyler, you were at the game last night. The crowd was amazing and electric. There's a different vibe around this team and its fan base this year, it feels.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the style of play certainly is a big part of that, right? It's faster. You could just tell, even watching on TV, the pace is just so much quicker. It's so much up and down the ice, back and forth. There's more scoring. That gets people excited. People that I friends with that are into the Canucks, and we watch games together, and even when they lose, it's still like, but that was a great game. And it's just, when was the last time we could really refer to the team in those terms?
Well, they're finally able to sell hope. I think it's Jeff Merrick who got me onto this, and I don't know if he got it from somewhere else or what, but teams need to sell one of 2 things: success or hope. And the last couple seasons have been tough for the Canucks because they haven't really been able to, with their on-ice product, sell either. Yeah. Last year we got a little bit with Brock Besser. But we're finally seeing that hope, the future, showing up and giving us Canucks fans a glimpse into what the next 5, 10, 15 years are going to look like. And with Elias Petterrson just absolutely blowing us away in terms of whenever he steps on the ice and whenever he touches the puck, at Rogers Arena, you can almost hear the audible gasp of an intake of air of everyone in the arena going, okay, what's he going to do?
Yeah, and if he gets into open ice, I mean, everybody's off the seat, like, immediately. Like, just the anticipation is huge. What's really tantalizing, I think, for me when it comes to Elias Petterrson is wait till he fills out a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, right now he's not shy about getting involved physically along the boards to try and get the puck. And he's not. Wait till he puts on a few more pounds and has a little more muscle. I mean, the possibilities are even more for this guy the way it's going right now, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's still so much to see with that. And it's getting so interactive that the owner of the Vancouver Canucks, who actually did do a media appearance, a physical talking media appearance earlier this year on the Canucks broadcasting on Sportsnet, but he was live tweeting last night. I believe that was the first time he's been live tweeting during games. How was this a good thing? Was this a bad thing? What did you think?
Oh, the first few tweets felt a little programmed, a little pre-planned in terms of he knew certain talking points he wanted to get out there, or hit him or whoever was tweeting from his account for him. Because I have a feeling that he's definitely, like, Don Cherry has a Twitter account. He doesn't necessarily actually send out those tweets. He's got someone who actually crafts those for him. And I think that's very.
He said that his producer does it for him. He's talking.
Yeah, and I think that's what we have with Aquilini here. And I don't think he necessarily is physically typing that in. But he's definitely feeding whoever's doing that what he wants to say. And I think that it definitely felt a little too programmed for my liking, but it was still entertaining. And
yeah.
I think later on in the game when things got a little hectic and all that, I think that's where you saw a little more of what we wanted to see, what would be nice from Francesco, but he still got his Uber plug in. So
yes, he did. He did get the Uber lift shot in there at the end, didn't he?
He did get the jab in there about Uber. You stole my thunder on that one there, Sean. No, I was just to follow up on that. I mean, I was looking through the tweets again this morning, and it kind of felt like towards the end of the third period, he wrestled the phone away from his handler and said, "Let me do that," because the tweets got a little shorter and a little more to the point with double question marks. Why was that not a penalty shot? And man, can you believe this? So it seems like maybe he took over the feed himself there at the end. But what do I think of it overall? I don't know. It's kind of a non-factor to me. I mean, she's just trying different things to see what the fan reaction is, I think.
I'd like to see more of it. It like I said, it felt a little forced and programmed at the beginning for me, but I still enjoyed it. It created more buzz, and I would say positive buzz towards the Canucks with the way it happened, right? And he got mentioned and all that in the Athletics and all that, and it was all positive. Like, despite the whatever that one guy on Twitter that I got into with thought the Athletics was more of a jab at him for not watching the game. But like I said, as we discussed, I think he's got a handler who does his tweets and carefully crafts them, and it comes across as a little program. But then again, that's a bit of the charm of what the Francesco Aquilini Twitter account has become.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea. I think there's other owners. I think from the Canadian franchise perspective, I mean, I think there's more owners that I would like to see kind of more communicate. Like, you look at the Flames, because they have 9 or 10 owners, it's hard for them to maybe do that. And I don't think that I don't think Ken King should be on Twitter. I just would have it already is a bad idea. Like, I think he's not a good for PR, but I got like Daryl Cates, I think can answer some questions. Even in Winnipeg, I think it's an interesting idea that I can see other people trying to do.
Tom Dundon with the Canes is out there, posting gifs of Dougie Hamilton doing the floss, saying this is why we had to get this guy.
Hey, if he helps in the floss, and that's great, because and the Carolina Hurricanes are fun to watch because they do some fun and interesting things, and I think it's attracting a new fan base. I mean, it's time for us to embrace some new schoolness. I know that, I don't know if you saw what Brian Burke said in at the second intermission of Hockey Night, that he doesn't like, or the first intermission of Hockey Night last week, where he was like Tortorella, I don't like the camaraderie and doing this kind of stuff. But I think this generation is different. It's just, they don't have that hatred for it. I mean, I think that they can separate the 60 minutes on the ice and having that intense battle and actually having respect and fun after. I think that they have a healthy balance. I don't see a problem with it. But maybe I'm different.
Yeah, hockey's supposed to be fun. And being a fan of and watching hockey is supposed to be fun. And what I think Francesco's trying to do is get some more positive and fun fan engagement, and I think you're going to see more and more of that, especially with being able to sell the future with Elias Petterrson, come of that, with him being quote unquote active on Twitter.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting, and I mean, we got some other things to get to, but I do think as a Canadian, in general, Canadian markets are very high pressure to play. Specifically, like, you look at what's happening in Toronto. If they lose a game, it's panic city there. I mean, if they win, everything is great. But so I think it's nice to have a little bit of fun and personality, and I think it might be able to attract some higher level free agencies if they see it's a little less pressure to be in Canada than it is right now. I mean, it's. I can see for a lot of NHL players why they don't want to play in Canada right now, because if you lose, the world is over.
It's the double-edged sword of playing in Canada. You win, you're a god. You're gonna be like a cult hero, like going for the rest of your life. But yeah, if you lose, it's very hard to be a hockey player in Canada.
Yeah. Well, one thing that fans do agree on generally, and maybe they disagree on how it is it's a fan prerogative to get on the officials a bit for a call that should be made and should not be made. This week in the NHL, there were a few controversial penalties. We had the Brendan Lemieux penalty in Europe against Florida that some were questioning. And Ian Cole against Mark Jankowski got a 5-minute major for In my opinion, and many Colorado Avalanche players actually and coaches agree, should not have been a 5-minute major. Yet there's also been times, and we have some examples, countless amount of examples of some hits that were even worse than what was called, than what Ian Cole did. Just from a Flames perspective, Jordy Benn's hit on Johnny Gaudreau should have been a major, then that wasn't called. There was a hit on Troy Stetcher, there was a hit on Sven Barchi, not called. What's the problem? Are we seeing this inconsistency, or what's the problem here? And or are we being too hard on the refs, or what are your thoughts here?
It's a fast game, so mistakes are going to happen. And I'm not sure if the Lemieux hit was a bit of a reaction to what happened with the Sven Barchi and the Troy Stetcher hits as well, because they looked very similar to me. Just flyby, like puck isn't there. High shots, high hits to the head area, and that's just the optics are really tough for NHL and the refs to keep up with. I just want, and I expect inconsistencies from referee to referee to game to game, just because of it's such a fast game. What I would like to see is just more transparency from the officiants and all that, because I want to see them say, this is why this was a penalty this time. This is why this was wasn't a penalty this time, and talk through it and be more communicative to the fan base and to the teams.
Yeah, I've been dying to see a bit greater accountability from the referees for years. I think with the 4 official system, you get 2 referees out there and they mix and match throughout the season. I think that creates a degree of inconsistency. Last night in the Canuck game, you had 2 veterans out there. It was Steve Kazari and Tim Peel. It was very let them play, and then you get a tripping penalty to Horvat late in the game. And if you just look at that penalty in isolation and then compare it to other trips that are called throughout the league, it's like, okay, yeah, that's typically a tripping penalty. But in the context of the game last night, it was very let him play. There was cross checks not being called, and then that gets called, and that drives everybody nuts, of course. So, the way I would summarize NHL officiating is the only consistency is the inconsistency. So I don't know how they would solve that. I think that people would certainly have a better acceptance of how things are if there was a little more explanation to it. As far as dirty play and calls not being made, as Sean said, it's very fast. Angles on the ice are a thing as well. It looks easy in the stands. It looks easy on TV. They're down there. It's so much faster. The angles, depending on their positioning, doesn't give them much of a chance to see those open ice hits very well. I think at the end of the day, given that there's a supplementary discipline system, I think it's easy for the referees just to take the easy way out and let someone else deal with it later.
Well, the supplementary discipline system is that's another one that that's also inconsistent. But what about, Tyler, you're a ref, so I would be interested to see how you look at this. What about the idea of possibly having not necessarily maybe even a challenge, but the opportunities for the refs to look at a hit if the guy is down and he's been down for a while, for the opportunities for the refs to look at the replay and say, should this be a penalty or not?
I don't know. There's a lot of with that. It's just like you don't want to extend the game time too much, right? We already had this bit of a discussion with the double high stick penalties in one of the Vancouver games, where they reviewed to see who was the high stick culprit, which I don't think they did that correctly, but it's finding that fine line of getting the call correct, but not taking so long that it's a 3-hour game.
I know what you're getting at, Kevin. I think it's such a fundamental change. It's hard to imagine that one coming down the line anytime soon to essentially go to the video and look for help to get the ruling on what is a judgment call correct.
But not on every hit.
Yeah.
Right? But, the guy is down, and,
there's time anyway.
Yeah,
I don't know. The parameters would have to be pretty tight on how you would do that. If you're, what if you look at it and then make the conclusion it's only a minor penalty? Then, sort of where do you draw the line on when the video review part would kick in?
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah. I think that's in some ways a bit more valuable. The two that I want to see that I think I would like to I would like to see the offside be eliminated as a potential challenge, because I think that just in a lot of ways that's frustrating. But I wouldn't mind if we switched and did the challenge on if a puck actually hit a stick before it went out. I think that there's a legitimate challenge there.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's something to look at. And then if this game is getting fast and we're expecting the referees to make an instant decision, it's tough. I just or to find some sort of way that it says, okay, you don't want to take it out of the ref's hands necessarily, because they're doing their job, but also the inconsistency is a bit frustrating for a lot of fans, right? And
absolutely,
but I also think that the other thing is that the NHL has to determine an effective supplementary discipline and not spin the wheel of justice depending on. I guess in some cases there's an understandability of it, because, a guy a first-time offender as opposed to a couple-time offenders, maybe. But, at the same time, why is Tom Wilson able to appeal 6 times for his 20-game suspension?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I find it hard to get into a big debate with a lot of people with supplementary discipline, because they bring up hits and suspensions, non-suspensions from 2-3 years ago, because yes, maybe from then to now there's a lot of inconsistencies, but the things change and optics change and the standards change from year to year based off of what happened the year previous, and how the optics continue to change based off on head injuries and injuries period, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the inconsistencies can be very much exploited from media and fans based off of where they want to take the argument, but I think it's such a tough line to toe too for George Parros, because you want to discipline players appropriately for those dirty hits, but you also don't want to make hockey a drastically different game than it is now, and take out what makes it such a special game in the physicality.
Yeah.
So, and as I said earlier, hockey is such a fast sport where one split second early on making the decision to go for a hit or a split second late can be the difference between a clean hit and a dirty hit.
Yeah.
We go back to that game one, Calgary, Vancouver, that Goodbranson hit on Dubé. Goodbranson just decided to stop and pivot to make that hit, just a split second too early, and he hit Dubé in a bad way. Yeah, it was a bad hit. Yeah, he owned up to it. But in all reality, had he taken a split second more time to make that decision, and the timing of that hit would have been clean. And that's just the way hockey is. It's the unfortunate consequence of a game that is so fast and is made up of decisions in split seconds.
Yeah, and you get fan bases. I mean, in general, I mean, not always, but I think there's fan bases that will like scream for justice in one and ignore if it's their guy. It's like, well, that's not so bad. You know, it's such a tough thing. But yeah, it's hard on that. But I think.
Unless with supplemental discipline, they put in policies that make it cut and dry. Say you're penalized for a check to the head, it's an automatic, say, 5-game suspension, or automatic minimum 5-game with the possibility of more. If they had it more cut and dry like that, I think it would work. They don't want to do that because they clearly don't want to have star players have to miss a minimum time for things that they might see as not really that intentional or vicious. So what you have is a system which is highly politicized. Yeah. But that's the way the NHL wants it.
Especially when you get into the playoffs, you don't want a star player gone for 5 games. That's pretty much a series for you, right? So, yeah.
The NBA, like when there's transgressions, they don't screw around. Like there are minimum numbers and often double-digit numbers, and they stick with that.
Yeah,
but it's a different game.
Yeah, it's a completely different game where there's a lot less like vicious physicality.
Yeah. I mean, even in the CFL, there was that whole debate on what Odell Willis should have got for Zach Collaros. Rider fans were, Willis should be kicked out of the game and never be allowed to play ever. And BC Lions fans were like, yeah, it's a pretty bad hit. He should get a fine, but
it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Right? That's always the argument. Well, it wasn't that bad when it's your guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's tough. It's really tough. And yeah, it's going to be politicized anyway. That's the problem because fan bases will politicize it. So Slava Yoynov wants to come back to the NHL. He was suspended or banned from the NHL for a domestic abuse, and just for the benefits of those who don't know what happened, I'm going to encourage you to Google it because what he did wasn't just, it's quite graphic what this guy did. It was pretty horrendous, and very graphic. There were a lot of women that especially stood up and said that they do not want to see Slava Yoynov in the game ever again. Katie Strang from The Athletic retweeted her article that she put out a couple years ago explaining the dangers of bringing back Slava Yoynov. What are your thoughts on this? I'm not saying that maybe a question would be if Slava Yoynov, do you think that the NHL would reinstate Slava Yoynov? And the second question would be, do you think a team would take a chance on Slava Yoynov in this day and age?
I don't think they will. I think they're going to do their due diligence and make the facts real, cut and dry for him, saying that based off of what he's done, he can't come back. But if by chance I'm wrong and they do, I think there's only one team that would at this point, and that's the Kings, just because he's been there and he's got relationships with the players in the room and all that. So I don't think anyone else would be. I think it'd just be too much of a toxic potential to ruin a dressing room based off of what he's done.
given kind of the way other pro sports leagues in North America have handled issues around domestic violence, I would be really surprised if the NHL at the end of the day decided to reinstate him. But I do think they want to be able to defend that decision at the end of the day. They want to have due process. They want to gather facts. They want to be able to stand out in front of the public at the end of the day and say, we did our homework on this and we don't think he belongs here. They don't want to just say, no, you're not coming back just because it's the in thing to do right now. They want to have this highly defensible. So there is going to be, this whole fact-finding and investigation and an application for reinstatement and all that, but it would really surprise me if the NHL brought him back. And I think in the case of it being a non-American, non-Canadian player, I think it makes it a little bit easier for them to make an example out of this particular guy.
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, the NHL did not have an opportunity to truly investigate this to the way that they wanted to at the time. So that's why that there's an investigation. I know there was a lot of people on Twitter saying, why do we need an investigation? Because the NHL actually didn't. And I mean, it's fair for them to do that in a case of defending that. And there's probably... I think it's one of those things that I think the NHL I guess that's an interesting question. If his name was Steven Vickers from Manitoba, what would the reaction be? And I have to say, I don't know if we would have the same. I'm not entirely sure we would have the same conversation, but maybe we would. I don't know. I want to be optimistic. But I do. There always is a team that takes these kind of chances, I guess. And I could see the Kings, and I could almost see the Carolina Hurricanes thinking about it a little bit. A team like that doesn't have a major hockey fan base may think about it a little bit more than like if a Canadian. I can't not see a high-end, high-attended, or well-established fan base NHL team taking a chance on Slava Yoynov. To me, I don't see that, but I could be wrong. But I think that would be a pretty hard PR disaster, in my opinion.
The only parallel here that I could come up with, Kevin, is we've seen some instances in Major League Baseball where players have run into troubles. Roberto Osuna most recently when he was with the Blue Jays, and there seems to be a willingness of other teams to give a player like that a second chance because it didn't happen under our watch, so to speak.
Yeah, that's true. Adrian Peterson in the NFL is another example.
Yeah.
He was given a second chance. So, I guess it depends on how you justify it. And I mean, ultimately, I think the Astros got bit for it, PR-wise, team-wise, and they didn't win the World Series. And I don't know if it was specifically because of Osuna or because the Boston Red Sox were 10 times better. Who knows? Whatever. But yeah.
No, but the whole idea of bringing him in was to improve their closer role, and they didn't end up winning. So now it just looks like, what were we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, but then again, the other side of it, if you win the World Series because you brought in Osuna, does that justify that decision because you won?
I think it makes it easier for their fans to overlook.
Yeah, it's such a tough. I don't know. It's such a tough thing.
Yeah.
The whole debate around second chances around that it's such a I mean, if it was me, I think maybe my idea would be is the panel should be a panel of all women, and he has to answer to an all woman panel. And if the women say that he has a right to go back, then sure. But if not, no. Maybe that's maybe ridiculous.
And that's just another issue where we're three men talking about something that's And well, yeah, it was wrong what he did, and it's pretty appalling. But it's the women who feel the effects of this more than we do.
Yeah.
So it's tough for us to really gauge where things are, what the right move is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for the LA Kings, I mean, their organization internally would have the best feel on their fan base and how much of it is a female fan base and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it'll get to the point where the Kings would even be able to consider bringing him back. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think the league is going to take a chance here. But if the league did say, okay, we're willing to give him a second chance under certain parameters, I would say I would think the Kings may just move on.
Yeah. Speaking of the Kings, they had some good news. And when I'm saying that, I'm being sarcastic. They've lost Jonathan Quick for a really long time. And they look like they are, we've talked about them last week, but they look like this, they have seemed to be the team with the best shot right now at getting Jack Hughes. Are they done, or?
I think they're not going to make the playoffs, but I think there's too many other players in the Jack Hughes race, like Detroit comes to mind. That blue line in Detroit is not good.
Yeah, Detroit's hurting badly. I think the LA Kings are a long shot to make the playoffs at this point, for sure, because you look at that Central Division and it's very strong, and you would think that it's more likely than not that the 2 wildcard spots will go to Central Division teams. So that leaves 3 playoff spots for Pacific Division teams, and LA is in last place. So it's the number of teams in front of them for limited spots that really is a problem now. Like they're in quite a hole.
Yeah.
And to lose Quick is just devastating. It's such a huge part.
Yeah. And the other team in that area, the Ducks have lost 7 games in a row. Like it's, not looking good there either. But the Buffalo Sabres, who, as of this recording, defeated the Ottawa Senators 9-2, and are, as of right now, 13 games into their season in an actual playoff spot. I believe actually they just tied the Maple Leafs, although the Maple Leafs have a game in hand with 16 points. And we have the Arizona Coyotes, who have won are in the longest streak here of 5 games in a row. Are we surprised by them, or should we expect more, or is it just like, hey, this is good, but they're not? These 2 teams are not going to be playoff teams at the end anyway.
Buffalo's made some good moves. They've got a really good franchise center in Jack Eichel leading the way. They've got Casey Middlestad and among others up front, and then they've got the 2 Rasmuses. It looks like, unfortunately, Rasmus Dahlin left the game though after blocking a shot. So that'll be something to watch, whether or not it's just a bruise or a stinger or some. Hopefully, just one of those 2. But I like Buffalo in terms of the pieces that they have. I think this is the season that they should be taking that next step to start to develop the younger players and teaching them how to quote unquote win going forwards. And then Arizona. Outside of their just abysmal start last year, they were a decent team. So if you understood that, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise, because they've got some good pieces there as well.
I think for both of them, it was just kind of a matter of time before they were going to start to put it together with some younger players. They've been picking high in the draft for a while. Of course, the problem for those teams is that there's a lot of competition within their divisions for playoff spots. Atlantic Division with Toronto and Buffalo and Tampa Bay in there makes it pretty tough. Montreal's having a surprisingly good start to the season.
Yes, they are.
So like Buffalo, they can't afford to go on long stretches losing or they're out of it, right? but it looks like they finally are starting to put it together. Rasmus Dahlin's obviously a huge help. Jack Eichel's been pretty good. Arizona, you got Clayton Keller there. He looked great against the Canucks, I thought, last week. So it's just a matter of hanging in there as the season goes on, and then making a push at the end for a wild card spot, I think.
Yeah. I mean, San Jose is not off to the greatest start in the world. I mean, I think people were expecting them to be maybe higher, but I think it's just that's going to take a while to mesh Erik Karlsson in. But that's going to happen, and they'll take off. And there's a lot of teams off to pretty slow starts in the East too. Like Washington's not off to the greatest of starts. They've been kind of sputtering here and there.
But that's to be expected. I mean, they coming off a Stanley Cup victory.
Yeah.
The ultimate Stanley Cup hangover.
Yes. Yeah. Ovechkin's still hungover, I think, as we were speaking. But I mean, it's just I think other teams are still going to start ramping up. But it's nice to see Arizona and Buffalo kind of, because they've been bottom dwellers for a while, especially Arizona. Like they haven't. It would be nice to see them at least compete for a playoff spot a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Minnesota, just want to say, I mean, they're really off to quite the start.
Yeah, they were winning 4 in a row until they ran into Vancouver. Yeah, they're off to a good. That's not a bad team over there. They're once I watched that Oilers game, and once they got the lead in the third period and against the Oilers, they found a way to lock that down. So. Yeah, they're a lot tougher. St. Louis has been stumbling a bit. I don't think Winnipeg has been as good as last year yet, but that's going to take. I think they'll get that together. I mean, I've been traveling to Europe and road trips and travel and stuff. I think that's something. But it's interesting because I mean. I think there's been we had Montreal as 7-3-2, and some teams that are off some really slow starts, and right now 5 of 6 teams of Canadian teams though are in the playoff spot. So who knows? We may have more Canadian teams this year than next, than before. Who knows? It'll be interesting. So is there anything else we need to talk about? We've covered a lot, but.
I just wanted to get a word in about Brock Besser. Last night was my first chance to see him live. I went to a game last year, but it was at the end of the season when he was hurt. His skating didn't look like an issue to me last night. I know there's been some commentary today that looked, and even from Travis Green after the game last night, where he was talking about it looked like he had more pep, a little more jump in his game. Looking a lot more like the Brock Besser we're used to seeing. And, after, of course, the off-season, he was coming back from injury, and so he kind of got behind in terms of preparing for the season, had a bit of a slow start. But, boy, he and Petterrson looked great together. And to hear issues about his skating, it certainly didn't look like that last night. I mean, he was flying out there.
Yeah, he looks like he looks healthy again. And that's key, because he definitely looked a little labored in last few games.
Yeah.
So hopefully that just means he's beginning a long stretch, a good stretch of scoring like we saw last year.
Is he getting the benefit of kind of having his time in a sense, or not as much pressure because of the play of Petterrson to kind of get his game together, or is there still a bit of a spotlight or expectations on him?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think if Petterrson wasn't there and he's struggling like this, there would the mood around the team would be a lot different. But because Pettersson's come in and just lighting it up, there's probably a little bit of worry within the fan base about whether or not Besser was just got quite hot last year. But I think with Petterrson playing so well that it's allowed him to not have to face the music too much with the fan base and the media.
I think it's also given him more room out on the ice when he's playing with Petterrson. I mean, if you're a player on the other team, I mean, like Pettersson's presence out there is a bit of a distraction. You got to keep watching this guy, and that's going to create a little more space for Brock Besser. And I think we saw that last night.
Yeah, I think especially on the power play. I felt the power play's really struggled. Has struggled a little bit just because it's been a little bit stagnant, and especially with the constant rotation of players going through, with both Petterrson and Besser being out for a bit, as well as Edler. I think that the current five that they have on the top power play units is working well. I haven't been a big fan of Goldobin in that where they had him on that left side, the left point, and they've moved him down to the second unit and brought Eriksson up to be a little more of a in the slot area, and bringing Besser back to his left side shooter spot, and I think that going forward that should open up more options for him.
Yeah, be interesting. Yeah, it's one day I want to do a whole. I'm one of these days. I'd like to do a whole exploration of if I think the 1-3-1 is actually better than the 3-2. I think it probably depends on the players. Yeah, because I mean, there's some 1-3-1s that don't like. I don't think the 1-3-1 necessarily works in Calgary, for example, but it can work in other places, and I think it just like. I'd like to see some statistical evidence that it actually is a better power play, but it feels like it depends on the player, I think, more than anything else. Or players and coaches.
It definitely depends on the personnel, because the 1-3-1 when with the current setup is looking good. The 1-3-1 when they had even just Goldobin on there, and Pouliot just didn't seem to work, and it was causing more turnovers than actual scoring opportunities. So it really does depend on the personnel, as does whatever system and set plays they have to get into the zone and gain the zone when on the power play, because currently with what the Canucks have, it seems like they want the center to carry the puck in, and for the most part, and on the top unit with Bo Horvat, it's working, but on the second unit, they're struggling. So,
yeah. All right, where can we find you guys on Twitter again?
I am Beardy Canucks 03.
And Tyler?
And I'm at Tnoble, Tnoble.
All right, and you can follow me at KVULE. Remember tonight, folks, turn your clocks back. So, because it's fall back and daylight saving time. So one of the most wonderful things about living in the Vancouver area is it will get dark at 1:05 tomorrow. So that's nice, and I'm looking forward to that. But thanks again for everyone. Thanks, guys, for coming on. We will do this again next week. I don't know if it's going to be Saturday. I'm not sure what day, but we'll figure that out. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.